it's worth putting solar in. The solar system on a home today probably adds 4% to the purchase price of the home.
All right, we are live, and right now I am super excited to bring Paul Sandler. So one of the things in real estate, or one of the biggest questions I get, are always regarding solar panels. And, you know, none of us are experts out there. We don't deal with it on a daily basis. So luckily, I was talking to Paul, a couple months ago, and you were telling me about the company that you have. And oh my gosh, this interview was a no-brainer. So anyone out there that has solar, thinking of getting solar, you know, we're going to go over some of the problems, and Paul here is the solution. And I've been blessed to have Paul as a past client back when I kind of first started. So I am super thankful that you are taking the time out of your day to really educate all of us on solar panels and the company that you have, My Solar Stats, which is a amazing solution.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for asking me. I get a lot of questions on solar as well. Our business is just a monitoring business. So we do, as it says, solar stats. So we do all the statistics on what the system is doing, whether it's working or not, sending alerts to people. Obviously, the more complex or the larger the system is, the more important it is to have a monitor watching the system all the time and then notifying you if anything's wrong or that anything's broken so that you can get it fixed right away. But that's just on the monitor side. So, but from the solar system itself, I think people need to understand that, you know, whether you're trying to be green and, you know, be conscious of hydrocarbons in the air and such with making electricity. So whether you're trying to put solar in to be conscientious, or whether you're putting solar in just to cut your electric bill, I would say I can't think of a reason why a homeowner would not put solar in.
Got it.
One of the things I get asked all the time is, oh, well, I'm old, you know, I don't know if I'll have the house very long, so I don't know, you know, if it's worth putting solar in. And my feeling is the solar system on a home today probably adds 4% to the purchase price of the home. So your home's going to be worth 4% or so more if you have solar than if you don't have solar. You're going to have a lot lower electric bill. After you die, if you want to give your home to your kids, the home is worth as much as it costs to put the solar on. So it's almost like not losing any money to put solar on your home.
Right.
You would get it back when you sell, or your kids will get it when you give it to them. So I think people should consider solar as really an investment just in their own home.
Right. And Paul doesn't work for a solar company. So, you know, this is total, you know, it's not biased. He just monitors it. So he's going to give you really an honest, you know, opinion, you know, answers to some of these questions, you know, because you're not selling solar panels.
You know, if somebody wants to call me to install a solar system, I would say no, thank you. So
right.
I have nothing to gain by you putting in solar.
Right. Well, like, for example, what should people look for? What should they really consider if they're kind of on the fence to, you know, go down that route?
Well, the first thing I think that, and if you called any solar company, I think the first thing they would ask you is, how much electricity do you use today? So the first thing the customer is going to have to do is get all their electric bills for the year, and they can log on to the power company. In our case, it's Southern California Edison. you could log on to Southern California Edison and you could look at your last 12 months bills. Everything in solar is measured in kilowatt hours, kWh. Kilo for 1,000, so it's 1,000 watt hours, and that's how you buy electricity from the power company. It may be at different rates, so many cents per kilowatt hour, but everything in solar is dealt with by kilowatt hour. So you're looking at how many kilowatt system do I need to have to offset the amount of kilowatt hours that I use. So
is there like an average, like, a typical 3-bedroom, 1,500 square foot home? Is there some kind of, everything's different, whether they crank out their AC or, they don't, but is there any kind of like rule of thumb that the typical household on the typical size home uses?
I think just from my case, I used about 1,000 kilowatt hours per month.
Got it.
I have a 4-bedroom house, 1,800 square feet, and a pool and air conditioning. So that would be, kind of on the high end, I guess, about 1,000 kilowatt hours a month. My next door neighbor's got a 2-story house. He probably uses 12 or 1,300 kilowatt hours per month. And then on the very low end, what Edison would call lifeline, that's like the minimum people use, would be 300 to 400 kilowatt hours a month.
Got it. So, okay, that gives us a pretty good base.
Yeah. So you would figure 500-600 kilowatt hours would be kind of a home with no pool, not a lot of air conditioning use, or maybe no air conditioning, just heating, and the standard kinds of utilities, 1 or 2 refrigerators that doesn't use very much really. And I don't think we have very many electric hot water heaters. I think almost everyone has gas hot water heaters, right?
Right, the majority for sure.
There were some all electric homes for a while there, but and electricity for heating is terrible. I mean, you always want to heat with gas. You don't want to heat with electricity. It's very expensive.
Right.
So that's kind of a rough number. A rough number for solar. Now let's talk about solar, because remember, everything's in kilowatt hours.
Right.
So if you look at how much power you use in either an average month, or if you want to total it by the year, then you just have to, I would say total it by the year and then divide by 12. So you know about what you're going to use per month. So let's just say it was 600 kilowatt hours per month. One solar panel is going to make about 1 kilowatt hour per day. So there's your rule of thumb. 1 kilowatt hour per panel per day. So if you're going to use 600 kilowatt hours in a month and you got 30 days, so you're talking 20 kilowatt hours per day. That means you're going to need roughly 20 panels to make 600 kilowatt hours each month. You'll make less in the winter and more in the summer. So, now the other thing, and we talked about this before we started, everything, once you change to solar, you do not get a monthly bill from your power company.
Right. Yeah, definitely explain that one, because I was blown away.
I know. It's not confusing, but people don't seem to understand it. You do get a monthly bill. And on the monthly bill, the required payment is to be a customer of Southern California Edison. So if you have a meter and you turn the power off to your house and use no power, you would still owe them $10 a month.
Got it.
So you're going to get a bill from Edison. It's going to say you owe $9.78. And most people then say, oh, cool. I put
Right.
solar up and now I owe $9.78.
Right.
Is that doesn't include electricity. That's
And that's something what happens, because when, like when I represent a buyer and I said, hey, we asked the seller how much is your monthly bill, and they'll say, oh, it's like $10 a month, but they'll say, oh, we pay the bill at the end of the year, but they don't really say what it is typically, or try to break it down to explain it better.
Yeah. So the Edison bill is 6 pages long. On the first page, it says you owe $9.78.
Got it.
On the 5th page is a little box that says, oh, this month you used $50 worth of electricity that you had to buy. And so if it's month 1 of your solar year, and that solar year starts when the solar system was turned on. So in my case, I turned my solar system on in October of the year I put it in. So my annual bill is October to September every year. So
got it.
September, when I get my bill, it says, oh, for the last 12 months, here's the total amount you owe us for electricity. And so when people only look at the front page, they think they're only spending
yeah, they're like, yes.
that sounds really good, except they may have bought $50 or $100 worth of electricity from Edison, and it just keeps accumulating on page 5.
Got it.
On the first month, it would say, okay, you owe $50 this month. On the next month, it says, oh, you used another $30 this month, so now you owe $80. And the next month, it says, oh, you used $100 this month, now you owe us $180. And boom, 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 boom until month 12. Right. And then they say, okay, now you need to true up. So that's your true up month. You owe us $1,200. And you got to pay them that month for the whole year's worth of electricity.
Ouch. Is there some way that they can just, because, most of us aren't great with saving and putting like taxes, most of the taxes on property are impounded, so you don't have to, come up with $5,000-$10,000 at the end of the year. Are they able to, pay monthly towards that so they don't have such a big bill?
Yes. So whenever we put the monitor in, I always make the customer drag out their bill because I know no one's ever told them this before. So I show them on page 5 where it says, okay, you've accumulated like $250 worth of electricity that you've bought up to now. You might want to send them up 150 maybe, just kind of stay close. But remember, because it's an annual bill, you may, like, for example, on my house, I make as much as I use. So my bill is 0 at the end of the year. So that's a very nice number. I like that number.
Right. Well, how many panels do you have?
I have 44 panels.
Got it.
Now, you've seen homes with 3 panels and 5 panels and 6 panels.
Right.
Now, I installed my panels 13 years ago. They were the biggest panels I could buy at the time. Panels are just like light bulbs. The same physical size panel when I installed were 175 watt panels. So just think of a 60 watt light bulb or a 100 watt light bulb is exactly the same. I bought 175 watt panels, and those were the kind of big at the time. Now they make 360 watt panels.
Wow. So now you would, if you were in that position, you wouldn't have to have 44. You can buy almost half.
Yes.
Got it.
I could buy 20 and still make as much as I make with my 44.
Got it. And in standard, is it standard in the industry to have those type, or do people try to sell the the cheaper type and someone wouldn't know?
No, I think for the most part, the current installers would be using maybe not the absolute largest panel because they're more expensive. You're getting more. Is it like buying a car with a bigger engine?
Got it.
It may be more expensive to buy the bleeding edge, the 400-watt panel. But
Got it.
I think most will sell probably in the 350 range, 340, 360, somewhere in the 300s. So it would definitely be half as much as what I put up.
Got it.
And my son, he had 28 panels installed, and then we put another 10, and the 10 made more than the 28.
Wow.
So same kind of thing, because now they make bigger panels and or more wattage per panel. So, you don't need as many. And so the installer, of course, is trying to look for the least number of panels because that's the least amount of work he has to do.
Got it. So how fast is this going? So is next year they're going to be even more powerful and quick so someone wait, or is it pretty much, unless they're going to wait 10 years and it really is not going to make it that much of a difference?
Yeah, it's a difficult question. I would say when you should install as soon as you can, just like you would say you should buy a home as soon as you can.
Right.
And it's kind of the same thing. I've not had an electric bill for 13 years.
Wow,
now,
must be nice.
Yeah. Now I spent $40,000 to put my system up back then because it was like $7 a watt to buy solar, just the stuff to put on the roof. It's now less than $2 a watt, or less than $3 a watt for sure, to put solar up. So yes, it would get a little cheaper every year if you waited, but that was one more year you bought electricity.
Right.
So I think it all pays off. The typical solar installation, if you buy, not lease, and we can talk about that too, if you buy, it will pay for itself in 7 years. That's the typical payback. So whatever amount of money you're going to write a check for, and then you get a government rebate. There's some tax rebates for putting in solar. At the end of 7 years, you will have spent the same amount of dollars. So at the end of 7 years, you paid for it. My neighbor just put solar up, and he's going to pay for it in 7 years. So I put mine up. 7 years later, I was zero out of pocket. And so for the next 6 years, I haven't had any electric rate increases or any electric bill, right? Because I make a little bit more than I actually use.
Got it. And is it true that these companies buy it back? Because I've heard, some people are in the beginning, they buy it back, and now I don't know if they give credit. Do you know anything about that? The usage that you don't use or the wattage you don't use?
Yeah. Schwarzenegger back then, at least in California, passed a bill that said the power companies have to buy back any excess that you make.
Nice.
But you have a choice. You can carry the kilowatt hours forward. Let's say you make 100 more this year than you used. You could just accumulate those, kind of like your cell phone plan. You can accumulate those hours, or you can have Edison pay you for what it would have cost them to have made that 100 kilowatt hours. So it's a little bit unique. My first year, I said, "Oh, give me the money."
Right.
So I was $300 negative the first year I had solar.
Nice.
And they sent me a check for $99 because that's what it would have cost them to have made that $300 worth that they would have charged.
So now you go for the credit, right?
So now I said, okay, forget that.
Right.
Just carry it forward.
Got it.
And it would make sense to carry it forward because you're thinking about an electric car. I mean, nobody's going to use less electricity next year than they use this year, or very few. I mean, you could put LED lights in.
Right.
I recommend 2-speed motors for pools, huge savings. So you can do some things to cut back on your usage, but having like I have 1,000 kilowatt hours in the bank
Nice.
right now.
So crank up that jacuzzi, right?
Yeah, and when it gets warm, I turn the air on. I don't care because
right.
it's great, right?
Right.
And if I don't use the air, then it just carries forward to the next year, which means, so if it wasn't that hot this year, I'll save that solar to be used next year, Right. So I think the key here though is if you buy over lease. And
yeah, that's a huge one because sometimes we get into properties that they had either bought it or lately it's the seller selling. They have a lease contract that the buyer has to take over, and they still have 14, 17 years left on the lease because everyone I've run across, it's like a 20-year lease.
Yeah.
So what are the pros and the cons?
Leasing is all con.
Wow.
It just doesn't pay. The only reason you would put solar in on a lease, in my opinion, is if you want to say you have solar and you don't have any money. So it goes in for free, and in my estimation, you save nothing.
And why is that? Like how it almost seems.
Yeah, I know. It's the old, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is the real answer to this. When I put my $44,000 worth of solar in, I got an $11,000 credit, tax credit the next year.
Got it.
The solar leasing company takes that credit.
Oh, I didn't know that.
They installed it, and you're leasing it from them, so they get that credit.
Dang, that part I didn't know.
It's really good for them because they're going to get all their money back that they put in eventually from somebody, or you're going to have to buy out the lease, so they're going to get their money back, and they got that big credit.
Right.
So when I put mine in, it was the credit was handled a little differently on the federal side. Now it's actually a tax credit that you get, and this year 2020 is a 26% tax credit. So
wow.
if you put 30,000, well, I don't know if you could put $30,000 worth of solar on your roof anymore. It's not that expensive, but let's say you put $21,000 worth, and that would be a huge system. You'd get almost 30% of that back the next year in a tax credit.
Wow, that's a huge
big
benefit.
tax credit. Now, listen to these numbers because this is critical.
Right.
This year, which we only have a couple more days left, the tax credit is 26%. Next year, it goes to 22%. And the next year after that, it goes to 0.
So if you're thinking about getting solar,
I would
get
put
on
it
the move. Right.
which is too late now. But now whether the new administration or whether government will say, hey, we still want to push solar, so
right.
That 0 may not be 0. You know what I mean? They may change that. But that's the way it sits right now. 26 this year, 22 next year, 0 the year after.
Well, I got a question because recently I actually had called the solar company because it was being leased, and I asked them, hey, what are the pros and cons of buying versus leasing? And obviously they didn't mention about the tax part, but one thing that they did mention, or they explained to me, was okay, when you buy, we figure out how much wattage you're going to use, and we charge you the same amount of money for that month through the rest of the term. Where if you lease it, you start low and then it increases. So you might start at $80 a month, but by the time you get to the end of the 20, it might be 220. And that was kind of their explanation of pros and cons. It's either you have a straight payment for the rest of the life, or it just fluctuates into a number it's going to hit.
Right. Well, the problem, one of the other problems with a lease is you still own your electric bill. So as the electric rates go up, you are subject to all those rate increases. So, you got a lease for 20 years, but that's not how much it's going to cost you to buy electricity for 20 years. You still have your electric bill. So I had a friend down the street. He said, "Oh, I got solar now, so I can use all my air conditioning every day. I don't have to care about anything." I said, "No, you still own your electric bill." He said, "No, I pay $9.70 a month." I said, "No." I went through that with him too.
Oh man!
At the end of the year, when he had to true up, he paid $1,000 for his electric, which was all of the money he saved in putting the solar in.
Got it.
So he ended up with zero. And now, as rates increase over the next 20 years, he's going to absorb those rate increases. Right?
Got it. So if you're looking for solar, definitely buy. But what advice would you give to someone that is leasing or is getting a property that's leased or has bought a property that is leased? Is there anything that they can do or?
Well, you can buy out the lease. I mean, because you've lost that tax credit, it's a huge difference, right? Because they got that 26% and you didn't, and now it's too late. I don't know how that pencils out, because if people ask me, what should I do, lease or buy, tell them buy. If you don't have the money, of course you don't have the money. So, I mean, that's understandable. But if you would take a loan out, a home improvement loan to rebuild your kitchen, I would consider the same thing for putting solar up. I mean, if you take a $10,000 loan to put solar up and you have either very minimal electric bill every month or no electric bill every month, and that's going to go on forever. The solar panels are guaranteed for 25 years to put out a minimum of 80% of what they did on the first day. So they're going to perform pretty much for the next 20 years. There are a couple of ways of installing solar with either micro inverters or string inverters, probably a little more complex than it's worth talking about here. Do
these companies give you the option of either one, or do they just stick you with one?
I think most companies have a preference. Like you can talk to one installer and they say, "Oh, we put in string inverters." And then you talk to another installer and he says, "Oh, we only do micros. We recommend."
And what's the difference and what's the benefit?
It gets a little technical. Basically, the microinverters were an easier way to install, a little less electrical conduit and piping and wire and stuff. So the installers liked it. But then if one inverter fails, like on my 44 panels, the inverter is underneath the panel. So you can imagine if one fails.
Oh, yeah, that's a pain.
It's going to be a real pain to take a whole bunch of your solar apart to put the one new $200 micro inverter in and then put all the panels back. So early on, the micros weren't very reliable. Now they're a lot better. So,
that's kind of what was so exciting about your company, because, I didn't realize, and I don't think anyone realizes, there's really no way to monitor when something fails, like, what you just mentioned, what happens if one goes out and you had to fix it? Well, how do you even know if one or two or the whole system goes out?
Exactly. I have a friend in Arizona put a system in with 2 strings of 10 panels, and he called me one day and said, "Hey, it doesn't look like my system's working right." So I dialed into his monitor, and 10 panels were offline. He was making half because of a burned wire. And I know they're not supposed to use wire nuts ever, but I know they do because it's cheaper to install and no one knows. Both the inspectors don't look and
Right.
you don't know to look. So
Right.
I told him, I'll bet you have a wire nut that burned up and now you lost half your panel. So call the guys, they'll come out, and I'm sure that's what they're going to find. And of course, that's what they found, a burned up wire nut. So they put another
Wow.
2 cent wire nut in, and now he's got half his panels working again. So now I told you about my baseball player friend who,
Yes.
he had our monitor. Our monitor, although it may cost $1,000 to install all the hardware, it's only $2 a month for the monitor. So
$2 a month. You can't get anything for two. You can't even buy $2 for $2.
I know you can't subscribe to the newspaper for that. But his accountant failed to pay his $24 for a couple of years, so we turned it off. And he had a whole bunch of the solar break, which is not uncommon. I mean, after a while, you get a component that fails. I mean,
Right.
So that happened. He got a $26,000 electric bill at the end of the year because half of the solar was now running for the whole year. And
Wow.
he didn't know. How's he supposed to know?
Right. Yeah, because you don't get the bill until the end.
Well, if you look on page 5, you would know. But
Who does that?
Yeah.
I seriously, anyone out there watching, when's the last time you really looked at your electrical bill? Probably zero.
At least past you owe this amount, right? That's it.
Exactly. That's as far as I get.
And so it's really important for solar people to understand you're on an annual bill.
Right.
So that's critical. And, if you want to log on to Southern Cal Edison, they will show you, they'll graph every day what you made. So if you pay attention, you wouldn't have to have a monitor. And even the monitors that some of the solar companies give you for free, they don't tell you anything. You have to log on to it to look. Our monitor sends you an email if we see something wrong. So that's the huge difference between what I'd call a monitor service, which is what we have, compared to a monitor, like a gas gauge. If you don't look at your gas gauge, you don't know you ran out of gas either, right?
Right.
So the same problem here. If you just log on to Edison, say once or twice a month, you could look to see whether you think you're making about what you think you should be making. Because the other problem is, and I know nobody believes this, Edison has no idea how much your solar system made. No one does. The only thing they know is the difference from how much you used to how much you made. So let me give you an example. So if you used 100 kilowatt hours today,
right,
and your solar system made 100 kilowatt hours per day, which those are bad numbers, but I'm just, for example,
right.
Edison would say you didn't make any and you didn't use any, because all they know is zero. You made as much as you used. So when you log on to Edison, it says zero.
Right.
That just means you didn't buy any from them. It doesn't mean how much you used, and it doesn't mean how much you made. No one knows that unless you have a monitor.
Man,
Yeah.
so that doesn't make sense at all. I mean, there's such a big problem out there, and you're such a big solution. I mean, it doesn't make sense why not to have your company, My Solar Stats, do that. And I can't believe it's only $2 a month. That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, the solar installers don't like to do any work, so they don't like putting in anything. We can install the monitor anytime. So if somebody's had solar for 10 years, we can install the monitor anytime. And if they go to mysolarstats.com, they can look at our demo site, mysolarstats.com/demo.
Perfect.
And you can see, a solar system in action, how much is being made, how much is being used, and what the difference is. So we do all three of those things so that you can tell what's going on. You know how much your house used, you know how much you made, and you know what the arithmetic difference is, what they call net metering. And so when Edison does the net metering, you have no idea if your solar worked or not.
Right.
All you know is what the difference is.
Well, when can you install it? Like, is this something that you have to install when you first buy it, or can someone install it even after 3 years or 5 years?
Anytime.
Yeah. Is it? So let's say, for example,
the fun. Well, I don't mean to jump in, but the funny part is, my thinking is you should put the monitor in before you put the solar system in, so that you know how much your house is using.
I didn't know you could do that.
But I mean, the monitor can be put in at any time.
So even if someone didn't have solar, they can still have your company monitored?
Well, I'll give you an example of our monitor. We installed a monitor in a 8-story condominium complex that is an old building that has 1 meter from Edison.
Oh.
And so they kept telling all the owners of the condominium, you can't have air conditioning in your condo because, you would be using more electricity than the next guy and everything. So we actually monitor every condominium, and then we create the electric bill for the condo association at the end of every month of how much each condo used of the electric that came from Edison.
Wow, that's genius. So some of these like fourplexes, apartments that they just have that kind of system, you're a solution for that as well.
Yeah, so if somebody owned a fourplex or an apartment and they only have 1 meter and they want to charge each user for their own, we would install the monitor at the power panel. We would monitor each condominium or each apartment, whatever it is, separately. And then we would the billing system's online. You key in your electric bill and hit go, and it prints out how much each person owes. They're part of the electric bill.
Wow. So if you're looking out there, listening out there, you guys have some kind of complex apartment, man, I mean, that's huge, because, your other option is just divide it amongst everyone. And like you said, that'd be so unfair if someone's using a lot, using none. And that's a huge selling point, because I know when investors were looking for, properties to buy, if it's just on that one system, that's not a benefit.
Right. Yeah.
Because that's going to affect. Man, that's good.
Yeah. So any multi-user building that has 1 electric meter, we can separate the users, electrically, and identify how much electricity each is using. So like a strip mall, I think most of them probably have a meter on each, unit in the strip mall. But anybody that has multiple users, you have a big warehouse building with 1 meter, and you have a bunch of different, you're subleasing, space out. You could separate those electric bills with the meter, because all we're doing is monitoring electric flow. So we don't care who the manufacturer of the solar is. We don't care who the power company is. It doesn't matter. We're independent of all vendors. So if you had solar PV, or if you had wind generation or a diesel generator, or it doesn't matter. We're just monitoring energy flow. So that's why we can say, okay, here's how much electric your solar made, and here's how much electric your building used. And then, of course, mathematically, here's the difference, right? You either made more than you used or used more than you made, and we do it minute to minute, hour to hour. I mean, you can turn light bulbs on and off and see the monitor change. So, I mean, you could go through and do energy conservation using the monitor too.
So is it like, let's say, for example, whether it's units or warehouse subleased out or leased out and all that, is that $2 per unit, which is still really cheap?
The 8-story condominium, let me think now, what do we do for them? We charge them for the billing system too, because we do the billing system for them. They don't have to do anything. They key in their electric bill when they get it from Edison and say go, and then they get the pages that come out as each unit how much they owe. I think there's, trying to remember now. I think theirs was $80 a month, something like that. That's for that big condominium with the billing system. So
the billing system, I mean, that's a cherry on top. That saves a lot of time. Time is money.
Yeah. No, they pay their accountant to do it. Now they don't have to pay the accountant. Just a clerk, in the office does it.
Right.
They just key in.
Pays for itself.
Oh yeah, I think so. And from their standpoint, now they can tell all the owners, oh, you can run heaters, you can run air conditioner. We don't care what you do.
Right. Knock yourself out.
In your condo, we don't care.
Right.
We'll charge you for it. So, yeah. So I mean, it's fair for everybody that way.
Well, how many companies are out there that provide the service that you guys do? Because I've never heard of it.
No, there's some that monitor water usage in like a Rossmore Leisure World or something. If people had their own water and you wanted to charge everybody for their own water, they would put a monitor on every unit, and then they would tell them how much each person from watering standpoint. But there's not a lot of money in monitoring. A lot of people don't see the need or the desire. And we've talked about, you don't have to have a monitor, but like I said, you don't have to have a gas gauge either. But, there's an amount of money to install. I mean, that big condominium was like $8,000 to install all the monitoring, pulling all the wiring through the place and putting all the hardware in. But then it's $80 a month. So, there's some amount of money just to install the thing, and that may turn people off. But the idea of being able to monitor each individual unit, or like this, once we get the hardware in, our website does all the work. So
people just log on and see what's going on.
If you log on to mysolarstats.com/demo, that is a real house running right now. So you would see, and you could look minute to minute how much my solar system's using, or how much the house is using, or how much the solar's making, what the pool pump's using. I mean, we can itemize. I have a couple of customers that have Teslas, and we monitor the Tesla charger so they can tell how much electric their Tesla's using,
Right.
Cute. But it's again, from a solar system, you need to figure out whether it's working or not.
Right.
And if because it's on an annual bill, you need to be careful that it's not going to break halfway through the year and you don't know it.
Right.
Right. And because most of the stuff works for a lot of years, the solar panels are going to work for 25 or more. The string inverters are going to work for at least 10, 15. The micro inverters probably the same 10-year, their warranty for 10 years. So, if you find something is broken, you might be able to get it replaced under warranty, but you got to know it's broken.
Right.
So,
man. So anyone out there looking or watching, you got to connect, the people with Paul. I know he's doing me a huge favor. We actually, when we had this conversation, months back, I said, "Oh my gosh, you're such a huge solution to a big problem." And I know you're like, I don't really want to blow up. So if you guys are watching this, either connect Paul with, I would say commercial realtors, because that whole sublease stuff in these warehouses, that's huge. Because I know you deal with a lot of big companies versus more the residential side.
Yeah, no, we have a monitor in a casino in Palm Springs too, monitoring. They have 24,000 solar panels.
Oh my gosh. Is that the most that you guys monitor?
That's the most single customer that I have for panels. And I will tell you that after I installed the monitor, they have two systems. On one system, we found 500 panels that were not working.
Wow. So you guys just paid for yourself and full just by finding that out.
I think so. I mean, but the problem is it's just not easy to find when there's problems if you don't have a monitor.
Right.
Impossible. So, I mean, it's just impossible. Southern Cal Edison has a site with 100,000 panels. And I'm telling them, I'll bet you I can find over 10,000 panels that aren't working.
Oh, and they haven't.
They don't care. I mean, it's producing a ton of solar. I know it could do a ton and a half.
Right.
But nobody wants, just.
All right, if you're watching, you got some connections in SoCal Edison. You send this to their boss, because if it's not reached the boss, he's going to get in trouble, because we're going to say, "Hey, Paul Sandler here gave you guys a shot years ago, and your shareholders could have been saving a ton of money." So if you're the CEO, the boss up there, I hope you're watching this.
Yeah, no, I know. The repair guy that I've connected to, he and I now put in monitors all over the place. We're doing monitors now on off-grid homes.
What do you mean off-grid homes?
They're a home that is too far away from the street to get electricity. So they have solar, which charges batteries, which run the house. They do not have a grid connection to Edison.
Is that efficient enough to run like a house like your size, or does it have to be just something minimum?
We're installing one in Julian. The house is 2,500 square feet.
No way, because that's huge. I mean, I deal with people that build homes from the ground up, and one of the biggest expenses is trying to find out where the utility lines. How much is that going to cost if there's no electricity around? That's expensive to get it to the home. So that is huge.
Yeah, no. And so there are a lot of homes. You and I don't know many people because they're not, in the city, basically, they're kind of on the outskirts, but they're called off grid because they don't have any wires from Edison going to their house. So if they're going to run the house, they have to run it off, either generator, which, in California, you can't run a generator too many hours because of the pollution. EPA won't let you run a generator. So now you have to have battery. So you run the house on battery, and then you put enough solar in to charge the batteries during the day and run your house during the day, and then the batteries run the house at night. So those people, they're really critical on knowing that, one, the solar is working, and two, that the batteries are charged. They got to know what the state of the battery's in. So our monitor does both AC and DC monitoring now. So we're going into. I just installed a monitor on the Cal OES, the Emergency Equipment Service for California. They have trucks that go out that are battery operated. That when they have fires and that the communication vehicles, and the batteries are always dead. So we install in the truck now. We monitor the truck battery and the solar that we put on top of it to charge the battery, and the generator that they run to charge the battery to run the truck. So
you guys can sell it in anything basically that is electrical.
Yep. And in those we installed a cell phone router because we're web based. So we actually have mobile internet in the truck to send us the data on the condition of the battery. So yeah, we've expanded now and that's why I say the reason we charge $2 a month for homes is that it's a side business now. It's what we started. When I put my solar on my house and I put my own on, I could not find any way to monitor it that I liked, that could tell me what the house used, what the solar made, and what the difference was. Nobody was doing that. So that's how we formed our company. We said, okay, we got to make a monitor to monitor my own house.
Right.
So once we did that, so then it was like, well, I think a lot of people could use this, but nobody's going to spend very much per month to monitor their solar system. They just won't.
Right.
And all the companies that had small systems that could monitor a home were charging like $8-10 a month, and it cost them too much to monitor it for the $8 a month. With us, we're really into the bigger businesses, more on the commercial side. So we just threw in the homes. If you want to put it in, a couple of bucks a month, and we'll let you know if it's failing. And so the homes are really not our business, but it was easy enough to just add it in and make it affordable so that anybody could put it in.
All right. So if you guys are watching, if you're lucky enough, or Paul will say, all right, you know John, or you're a past client, we'll take care of you.
That's right.
Man, I mean, I don't see you doing this. I mean, I would throw you on Shark Tank. I mean, this is just crazy amazing to me. I mean, it blows my mind.
No, me too. But it's interesting. People, I mean, I had a company, affordable housing group in San Francisco call me for a monitor, and they got no internet. They've got these big buildings, that are multi-story buildings for low income, and he wanted a monitor. And, everybody wants it until they have to decide how they're going to pay for it. And, what's the benefit and everything. You go, look, I'm not going to put it in for free, so,
right.
And it's going to cost you, $20 a month to monitor. I mean, they had 5 buildings. So I think we were going to do, I think it was like $60 a month, something for the 5 buildings for like 4,000 tenants. I mean, it was kind of crazy, but they were putting solar up. And this is, I guess, one other issue. If anybody puts solar up in California that's more than 10,000 watts, now my 44 panels is 6,800. So you get a feeling for 10,000. If you put a system up for more than 10,000 watts, you're required by law to have a monitor. Mm-hmm. And you have to have a monitor from a certified company in California that we are. We're certified with California as a performance monitoring and reporting service. So, but again, very few homes are going to put up a system more than 10,000 watts. I mean, that's just really big.
Man, that's amazing.
Yeah, so it's a lot of fun for me. I mean, we started it because I couldn't find a monitor for me, and so
Right.
I made one, and now we sell it.
Yeah, you're genius. Well, I got a couple more questions just
Okay.
before, because these are some of the ones that I kind of thought about. So I sold recently some newer homes, and one thing I noticed that they had very minimum panels on such a big home. Is that because, and I don't know if this is 100% true, but I heard that the newer homes have to have solar panels, and now, so are they just putting whatever in there just to get past that, regulation, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, yes, and yes. California passed a number of laws about all new homes have to have solar. They never sized it, so to my understanding, there's no requirement to have X% of what they think the home's going to use amount of solar on the home. So they're
Got it.
putting in just a minimal amount of solar in order to say, check the box that says I have solar.
Right. Done.
Yeah, it's done. So I would say, again, if you just think about it, if you're going to use around 600 kilowatt hours per month, and and one panel is going to make 1 kilowatt hour per day, you can now tell what's going to happen to those homes with 3 or 4 or 5 panels. It's almost not even worth putting on. I mean,
Got it.
It's not even going to be 10% of what they're going to use. So,
right, you're like, oh, perfect. You're paying for your porch light.
yeah, I mean, you won't even pay for your refrigerator. So
oh man.
Can
Can you add more? I mean, let's say you bought a new home. They have, 3 panels. Can you just add more to make it more efficient?
Well, yes. The string inverters require a minimum amount of panels to have a string. So that would be 8 to 10 or so to have any panels at all. The microinverters, you could put 1 panel on a house with a microinverter, because the microinverter is the whole thing. So you could put just 1 panel on. So when you see less than, I would say, 8 or 9 or 10 panels, you already know that they did it with microinverters. So that's one thing.
Got it.
And then if they put microinverters, you could add more panels, but if you add more than 10% to a system, you have to get a brand new permit for solar.
Really?
So, yeah. So by putting in 3 panels, they didn't help you much. I mean, if you're not going to put in, well, even 10, I would say if you're not going to put in 12 to 15 panels, you really haven't taken much of a bite out of your electric bill.
Got it.
So, I mean, if you put in 10 panels, you make 10 kilowatt hours per day times 30 days, you only made 300. We already said you're going to use 600 per month. So
Right.
barely used half. To put in enough solar to go to zero is probably silly, because you spend a lot of money to get that last little bit of solar. But I mean, that last little bit of usage. But to put in enough solar to take, say, 80 or 90% of your usage would be probably a good return on your investment.
So what would you suggest? Like your home, for example, what would you say, 1,900, 4-bedroom, 2-bath, square foot home? Was that?
Yeah.
So if you had to do it all over, with the new systems of the new panels,
if I just use my money, forgetting the new technology, because now the panels are bigger and everything, so
right.
But if I just use my money, I would say right now I have 0 electric bill.
Right.
If I had put in $10,000 less of solar for all the parts that I bought, I would have had a $20 a month solar electric bill. So going to 100% of my usage, I had to spend $10,000 more in parts,
right,
to to offset a $20 a month electric bill. So probably wasn't a good ROI,
Got it.
right?
Yeah,
So
that makes sense.
yeah, so if you're gonna if you use 600 to 800 kilowatt hours per month, probably be pretty average. If you have air conditioning, that's probably pretty good. If it's a small home, a bigger home, probably more like 1,000, 800, 900 a month. You'd want to make 80% of that. So if you're going to use 600, you'd want to make 480 kilowatt hours per month of 600. If you were going to use 800 kilowatt hours per month because you have air conditioning and you like to keep it cool and things, you're wimpy, current people. I didn't grow up with air conditioning when I was a kid, now
Yeah, what's up now?
yeah. So if you're going to use 800 a month, then you'd probably want to make 80-90% of that. You want to make the 600-700 per month. So you can just multiply that by the panels. I mean,
Right.
divide by 30, and then you know how many panels you need.
Right.
Or if you tell the solar company, okay, I want to offset 80-90% of my usage. But I think solar is a good investment.
Definitely not. Electricity is not going anywhere. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be cheaper next month than it was last month.
Right.
And you're going to use more than likely, over the years. We will have more energy efficient appliances and things, so that'll help some. But you're probably going to have more things, more PlayStation 2s, more PCs, more gadgets that plug in or need to be charged.
Right.
So it's probably not going away.
Right.
And I think you'll get your money back when you sell it. If you bought the solar system, if you leased, now you're in a bucket because, if the new guy doesn't want to pick up the lease, now you gotta, it could screw the sale up, right? You could lose the sale because nobody wants to pick up the old lease.
Yeah, and one thing most people don't realize is the solar company, when you're leasing, they actually have to approve the buyer. And back in the days, the solar companies had like a minimum of, like, say, 720 FICO scores, where we'd have these people that can buy all cash, but their FICO score was 680, and the solar company said nope. So they've gotten a little bit more. They've gotten a little more lenient on the scores. They're not as high, but the buyer still has to qualify through the solar company, even though they qualify for the property.
Yeah, sure, because the solar company doesn't want to have to come take the panels off, right? Because we failed to pay, so they're trying to protect themselves.
Well, speaking of that, that's one thing I did learn throughout the years where we had clients that, like, I represented the buyer, the seller paid it off. It was a lease, and the buyer's like, oh, they can just come remove it. And it seems like none of the solar companies want to go to remove it. So they put in the contract that a buyer would have to buy it out. But when they called the bluff and say, no, okay, you guys can come take it, they don't want to spend the money to send someone out there to remove it. So I think more times than not, if you just call their bluff, they'll probably just let you keep the system.
Oh, wow. Yeah, because, I mean, like mine, my panels are 175 watt panels. They're hard to find. I mean, because now everything's 300 and 400 watt, right? So there would be no market for if I took my whole system off and tried to sell it, I mean, I'd be lucky to get $1 a watt, but nobody would want to buy it, even though the panels are good for 25 years and, everything. Nobody would want it because it's old technology. So, yeah. No,
well, the other question, one of the other questions was, reputable companies versus maybe not so reputable. Is there any real difference, or is it just based the salesperson? It's not the company that might not be bad or good, but it's like the salesperson, or what do you think about that?
Boy, it's really tough because at least historically, the solar companies will go out of business before all the systems they installed start failing.
Oh.
That's their way of, then they make a new company with a new name, and now they sell for another 5, 6, 8 years, and then they go out of business. So
Wow.
just about every company that I monitor their panels that have had problems, every company has gone out of business.
Yeah, I've noticed recently the last two transactions that they started with one company, but every time, I don't know if just because of my luck, but Tesla has bought out all these companies that were in business, and for whatever reason, they just took over, and now they're the company.
Yeah, it's what happened was, it seems to me, what happened was everybody, because they know absolutely nothing about solar, all they could do was price shop. So if one company came in for $12,000, and then the next company said, "Oh no, you need my Solar Stats monitor, and so it'll be $12,800," they would go with the guy that was $12,000. So nobody wanted to put a monitor in because it added money to the deal, and they knew the only way they were going to get the deal is if they were either equal or less than the other bidders, or the people that because they're price shopping. And so it just became a price thing, and they kind of killed themselves. I mean, each solar company would eat the other guy.
Right.
And then the problem came, for example, you're supposed to use number 10 wire to go from the panels down to the inverter. They would tell you they're going to use number 10 wire, but they would put in number 12 wire because it was cheaper. So, and you don't know that.
Right.
They don't know that. Nobody knows that. The inspector doesn't look. So now you've got an inferior product with wire nuts that they're not supposed to use, and conduit that was plastic instead of metal. So now it leaks when it rains. And so, you know what I mean? And so the buyer actually ends up getting screwed. Right. And so I would say you want somebody who's been in business a long time, if there's such a thing, and everything you have that salesman say has to be in writing. You've got to get them to write down all of their claims. Oh, we're going to offset 105% of your electric. Oh, this is going to run for, we're going to install it in one day. Write it down.
Right. Got it. Huge tip.
Yeah, they will say, "Oh no, we didn't say that," or
Right.
And so whatever they tell you, it's not true unless they write it down.
Got it.
And
that's good.
Other than that, I don't know how you tell a good guy from a bad guy. I mean,
Got it.
If you ask them for a reference, they're going to have you go to some place that just installed a year or two ago.
Right.
I mean, a brain dead person could put one in and have it run for 5 years.
Right.
It's Tinker Toys. You snap the stuff together. So for 5 years, nobody's going to know that the roof didn't leak, or that the wire nuts are starting to burn up, or that the boxes are filling up with water, or that they didn't use it, or what. No one's going to know that for a number of years. So it's just really hard to tell. I mean, I can tell if I go put the monitor in, I go, "Oh,
right.
This was a shoddy job," because I can see the wiring and everything. So, I mean, but I don't know how a person would know.
Got it.
Yeah, just have them write down everything that they say. No guarantee unless it's written down.
Right.
And see if you can get somebody who's been in business a while.
So who would be a good referral for you besides the CEO of SoCal Edison? Which, man, if you're not, I hope someone connects you with them.
Yeah, no, I know.
Besides SoCal Edison CEO, like, who would be a good referral for you that you guys can take care of, like on the commercial side, so to speak?
Well, I mean, my neighbor just had a company called Infinity Solar put his solar in, and I think they did a really nice job. But, like I say, I mean, I know he used number 10 wire where he was supposed to, because I quizzed the installer. just to see what
Nice.
he was doing. And because it's so easy to hook up, and it doesn't take a master electrician to hook up a solar system. It sounds complex, but it is very simple wiring. So you could get people who really don't know a heck of a lot, and they could put solar up. And when they're drilling holes in the roof, you don't know it's not going to leak for years, right? And then once it does, what do you do, right? I mean, so, but he seemed to do a nice job. All the other ones, the companies that have installed who we're monitoring currently are not in business anymore.
Wow. So if someone were to go on your website, they can get all the information, how to contact you, regarding MySolar.
Info at mysolarstats.com. Yeah, it's on there. I mean, they can just click and send a note. But again, we don't install solar, and I don't want to be the evaluator for every human's solar system. Buy from someone. What do you think of this one? I'm going to say we don't talk about vendors. So, and I don't want to disparage anybody. I really have no idea. I installed my own, and
which is impressive on its own.
So I trust me, and I cut corners, but there's no way to know. I mean, if you hire a company to put it up, there's really almost no way for you to know whether they really did a good job or not, or used all high quality parts. And no offense to the inspectors from the city, but they don't understand solar very well, and so they do as good a job as they can to make sure nothing's falling off the roof.
Right.
But I don't think you can depend on the city inspectors to actually make you feel like, okay, the inspector inspected it, and so I know it's a good job. I wouldn't have that feeling. So it may just be pot luck.
Got it. Well, Paul, man, I cannot thank you enough. And for all you guys out there, you got his website, so go on there. He mentioned earlier on the website there's demos and everything like that. And please, if anyone knows the CEO of SoCal Edison, let's get him connected.
Yeah, I'd love to find out how many panels are bad on that big system.
Right. And if you're a shareholder, make sure you contact the CEO of SoCal Edison. Yeah. Paul, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate this.
You're welcome.
And thank you so much for taking the time. So you guys, Paul Sandler, mysolarstats.com. That's a lifesaver. You got the problem, now you guys have a solution. So thank you so much, Paul. You have a good one, brother.
Good luck. Thanks. Okay.
All right,
bye-bye.
Take care.
You bet.